Regulation is obviously such a big part of this industry. And I think right now, especially, is just a really interesting time for regulation. We've seen a number of things happen over the past couple of months, which have been interesting. We've seen a BVLOS waiver granted to an inspection company from the FAA during the coronavirus. We've seen, as we kind of spoke about earlier, we've seen a number of companies experimenting with different delivery options. But we notably have seen companies like CVS, UPS, Drone Up deliver prescriptions in different jurisdictions. How are you seeing coronavirus impact regulation? And are any of these changes here to stay? Do we think some of this, are we seeing some kind of temporary waivers or temporary allowances in the regulatory landscape that the FAA is maybe doing for companies to help during the time of the virus? What are some of your thoughts?
Yeah, so that's a great question. I think the short answer is the whole coronavirus situation that we're in has impacted regulation in a whole bunch of industries, the drone industry included. And because this is such an uncharted territory, I think a lot of industries are really trying to figure out how to adjust to this new environment. I think, as you said, there's definitely a question of kind of, is this a temporary thing, or are we kind of at the start of a shift into how we do things? As far as the drone regulation side of things go, coronavirus has absolutely impacted, in a lot of ways, the normal way of doing things, and has forced the FAA and companies to adjust. My opinion, I think that some of the use cases that are being pushed forward and are being accelerated because of coronavirus are probably here to stay. Mm-hmm. I think that, you mentioned the BVLOS waivers and drone delivery, accelerating. And I think that's not only true, but I think that is here to stay. And, mm-hmm. It's obviously there's a lot of hardship around the coronavirus, and it's impacting people in very profound ways. But I'm excited by the idea that this is one of those situations that really provides a lot of opportunities to use drones in a very, in a way that increases safety and right. and efficiency. And so in some ways, I'm excited that this is, that like the FAA is fast tracking some things, and I'm encouraged by the fact that we're, for such a safety conscious industry, that we are willing to explore some ways that truly will help people. And I think that there's some type of activities like prescription drug delivery, insurance inspections, things like that if you can remove the person out of the loop, you've unlocked not only efficiency, but the ability to do it safer. And in these times with less human to human interaction, some of these I think are I think here to stay.
I have a quick question. Is the FAA responding a lot quicker, significantly faster to some requests in your experience during this pandemic compared to before?
I think the FAA is moving a little bit more quickly on approving some things. I think if you go and look at the FAA website, they have a whole list of regulatory changes and regulatory advances that they've pushed forward as part of their response to coronavirus. Anecdotally, I haven't noticed any slowdown in terms of waivers being approved or things like that. And I think anecdotally, I've heard that that some of that is moving quicker because it is seen as a high priority now to not let red tape stand in the way of doing things that are either life-saving or are really going to increase safety for people who might be part of that operation otherwise. So I've been pretty encouraged with what I've seen from the FAA, that they do have to think things through, and they're not going to go off without doing their homework and really thinking through all the ways that this, that their regulatory changes or approvals could do things. I think a good example of that we can talk about is the Part 107 recurrency part of things, where sure, I think it took a little bit longer to get those guidelines than I think some folks would have liked, but it was a really comprehensive thing that affected a lot of different operators. So it wasn't something that they could just rush out the door. And so I think the FAA has done a good job of walking that line and reacting to what's the reality of the situation, while also following their mandate of being a safety first organization.